Okay, 2 minutes, 2 minutes.
Jethro, you there? But that's flip, take it off.
All right, if I could ask for you to just mute your mics, it will be all good. It'll be all good. All right, so don't forget just to mute your mic while I I do this session. Okay, 1 minute. We have 1 minute. All right, Ria, could I ask you just to mute your mic, please, if you don't mind? Thank you kindly. Okay, not an issue. That was solved. Okay, great. All right, so we do have time. So pleasant, good day to all, and welcome to Structure and Function of the Human Body, SNF, Part 1. So let me see, a pleasant good day to, let's say, Anjali, Aviel, Mr. Ramuta, Diane Kitwaru, Diana, Kimberly, Lucille, Natasha, Shania, Stephanie, Swinalia, Victoria, and Vishni. I hope I did pronounce the names correctly. Do we have any new persons joining today? Any persons who have come in for the first time today? If you could just unmute your mic and do a little introduction. Just say a name, where you're from, and something you like to do. That is not illegal, immoral, or fattening. Yes? So.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Natasha Roxanne Thomas. I am a nursing student year 2. I am originally from Trinidad, but I'm living in Tobago. I am also an enrolled nursing assistant. I love reading.
Well, that's a good topic. It's a good habit to have there, Natasha, because reading will suit you very well in this environment, most definitely. Thanks, and great to have you on board. All right, who's next? Ria?
Hi, good afternoon. I am Ria Milton, and I am studying psychology in nursing.
Great, something you like to do, Ria, when you're not doing nursing. What do you like to do?
I love to exercise.
What you're saying, that is great, phenomenal, particularly now in the time of COVID, where people put on a little bit of extra pounds. How have you been finding, has it been difficult for you to exercise during this COVID time?
Very.
I hear you have to think about novel ways to do it. Yeah? Okay, great. Nice to have you on board. Okay, next. Who's next? Vishni?
Hi, good day, everyone. I'm Vishni. I'm a nursing student also. I'm in my 2nd year, and I like outdoor activities.
What you're saying? You like hiking and so on?
Yeah.
You like going by the river?
Yeah.
But I suppose now these days it's tricky to go by Cora and so on. So you just had to hold back a little bit on that.
Yeah.
I understand. Welcome aboard. All right. Let me see, Miss Prasad. Anjali, you there? I'm not sure.
Hi, sir.
There's Anjali. What you saying? Today's your first day, Anjali?
No, sir.
No, you've been here previously.
Yes.
Okay. Because I got a email from one of the assistants from the department. So I was wondering, where that is concerned. So I probably mixed it up where that is concerned. Did you have any query in terms of the class this morning where that is concerned?
No, sir. No.
I mix it. Okay, I'm mixing you up with somebody else. My deepest apologies.
That's
all right,
okay.
everybody here is are they a member of the WhatsApp group? I'm guessing the new people. Right, I'm guessing not. Okay, so that was Mr. Ramuta and the others. All right. So one of the things when the class is finished, we'll straighten that out. And in fact, what's the easiest way to have them join the group? Let me hear suggestions from people who are competent at WhatsApp. For the new arrivals, what's the easiest way to get them to join? Let me hear you. Talk to me.
So I think a link was sent out to us where to join the group, so if somebody could send me link to the chat now.
Okay. So probably best way, okay, I'll resend a link then. That's probably the best way. Send everybody has access to their cont'd email. So in terms of those persons who are not in the WhatsApp group, is there anybody who is not in the WhatsApp group who doesn't have access to their email? Just say yay. Good. So everybody who is not in the group, they have access. Okay, so at the end of class, a link will be sent for you, to join the group from there. Okay? And so the WhatsApp group, that's how we keep in contact with one another. That's how we get alerts and so on. All right? All right, great. Okay, so let's start. Are you all seeing the PowerPoint to the left? You all are seeing PowerPoint?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll start there. I know for some people, we did go through it previously, but as I did mention to some folks, so this will be just a little revision for you. Certain persons, they did join the class a little later on, and one of the reasons being in terms of the registration process was extended. I know what you're all saying, sir, so do we have time in terms of the number of classes? Could we finish it by the end of the year? Don't worry, your little pretty heads, where that is concerned. That's where the administration, they will handle that part. So if need be, if they have to extend the semester until next year, they will do that. But they are handling it, I assure you, and rest assured that you will be given the full number of weeks as it relates to the teaching of this class. So you don't need to worry about that one. Okay? All right, so let's go. Without further ado, let's go. So chapter 1, organization of the human body. So as I mentioned before, this class is being recorded, and within about before 8 o'clock today, let's just say that, a YouTube video will be sent of the recording of this class. All right, so you'll be hearing everything here. So that's another study tool which you have every day. When we do have lecture, you will get it. In terms of access to that e-classroom, been a little tricky. Let's look at by the end of the week to get that access done, and I'll send the keys for you in terms of the e-classroom. All right. But for now, everything will be sent to the WhatsApp group in terms of the recording, okay? All right, so let's go. Chapter 1, organization of the human body. Let's go. So is the human body important? Oh yeah, it's very important. And understanding the normal body is very important for in terms of disease, understanding it does relate to structure and functions, right? So structure relates to anatomy, function relates to physiology, right? So structure and function, two important terms relating to anatomy and physiology as it relates to the human body itself. And in terms of organizational levels, it's very important to recognize how complex the human body really is. Right? It is a marvelous machine. I like to think about it like that. It's a marvelous machine. And in terms of the level of organization, from simple to complex, you could start at the level with chemicals. You have a combination of different chemicals which are aggregated or collected to make cells. Collection of cells makes specific types of tissues which are themselves a range collection of related tissues form organs. And then these organs form body systems within our body itself. Let me ask a question here. Quick question. How many body systems do we have? Body or organ systems do we have in our human body? Anybody?
We have 11.
11? Yes, we do. Right, very good. One less than a dozen, right? We have 11, right? A double one, 2 poles, right? So it's a nice way to remember it. Think about you in class and somebody asks that question, what you do? You raise your hand, right? And you put up your finger, your index finger. So just think of 2 of them, and that is the number of organ systems we have. We have 11. And what are those organ systems? A nice way to remember it is unsliced RRM. The letters UNSLICED, RRM, nice way of remembering. And let me just go through them real quick in terms of those organ systems, and maybe I could get some assistance from persons in the group itself. What does U stand for? Which organ system associated with your kidneys?
Urinary.
Right, your urinary, very good. N. associated with
Nervous system.
your nervous system, very important. And you know, when you think about it, oftentimes we just think about, well, we have the nervous system. Nervous system is incredible. We have millions of cells in the body, that's one. And not only do we have millions of cells, but when you look at it at the level of the neuron, which are the cells that actually make it up, just the distance between one neuron and another is on the order of nanometers, which is really, really small when you think about it, you know. And this nanometers in terms of that distance, right? It is, all of this are arranged in terms of all of those cells, they are arranged at that level, all right? Okay. So the next one, UNS, skeletal,
Skeletal
right?
system.
Very important. What would happen if we didn't have bones?
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be you'd just be a little bit flat, yes? Yeah, you wouldn't be able to stand up, very importantly. UNSL. L stands for lymphatic, very good. Lymphatic system that is associated with tissue fluid, right? The movement of tissue fluid, very critical, you know, for keeping things moist and also for circulating things throughout the body. I, what does the I stand for? Integumentary, that's a big word, right? That consists of the skin here and nails, right? Associated with those things, very important. And we recognize how important the skin is in particular when we have certain issues related to them, you know, related to the skin itself, right? So that is very important in terms of the skin, right? So what comes to mind, let's say, is if you have, unfortunately, let's say if you get a massive burn, right? That is when you recognize how important the skin is in terms of one, maintaining fluid structure or fluid within the body itself, and also very importantly in terms of aiding in protection or as a support to the immune system, because when it is now, let's say literally you have like a big sore, now it is an easy access point for microorganisms and bacteria to get into the body. So if you do, I don't know if ever you've been in the situation, or I'm sure you will be in terms of your professional career, in terms of being or seeing somebody who is burnt, not only do you have to control for infection, but also you have to control for water loss. That's something that is very important. UNSLIC. Circulatory, or sometimes called cardiovascular. Yeah, you would see in some books circulatory, but the corrector, if you would want to use that term is cardiovascular. Yes, because we could argue that both the respiratory system and the lymphatic system, that they are, in a way, circulatory systems themselves. So to be very specific, you would say cardiovascular system, you know, as the main one. Yeah, so cardiovascular, very important there. UNSLICE.
Endocrine system.
Endocrine system, very important in terms of hormones that circulate within the body. UNSLICED.
Digestive system.
Digestive system. And again, digestive is very important. Yes, yes. You know, without it, where would we be without it as it relates to taking in nutrients and nutrition? So that is also very important. So on slice R. Respiratory, that is true. And why do we breathe? Why do we need to breathe oxygen? Very simple. Why do we need to breathe oxygen? What do we do with oxygen? That's a good question.
It's good for the blood.
It's good for the blood, yeah. But why do we need oxygen? Why do we take it in? What do we do with that oxygen? Yes, we know it circulates in the blood, it goes to the hemoglobin, carries it to the different tissues. But what do we do with it? 3 words. Break down.
Energy.
Yeah, okay, you're right. You're right. You went a step ahead. If you were to take a step back, before we create energy, what do we have to do? As it relates to food, we have to break down food. And that's why we take in oxygen. You might remember, if you go back in time, you know, there's an equation. When you look at glucose, which is one of the simplest forms of food or representative of food, glucose plus oxygen gives you carbon dioxide, water, and energy. That sounds familiar? I don't know if you're familiar with that equation. C6H12O6 plus 6O2 given to 6CO2 plus 6H2O plus energy in the form of ATP. So in essence, what we are doing, we're taking that just in a nutshell, we're taking oxygen to actually disrupt the bonds that is within the food to create energy. And that's the main reason we take in oxygen. Yes, we take it and we know it's needed for life and so on, but our systems have really adapted to that. The main reason we use that oxygen for is to break that food down. And that is very, very important. And we break down the food in order to derive energy, as your colleague quite rightly said, energy in the form of 3 letters. What's the 3 letters associated with energy? 3 letters, all right? All right, I just want you to think about that. Just give me 1 second, all right? I'll be right back. I'm just popping to address something here. All right, oh, there's my mic, okay? So think about it. What 3 letters and what does it stand for? Give me 1 minute.
Hey, move from here.
Okay, hello, we're back.
Yes, sir.
Right, yes, so what does ATP stand for? Oops.
Adenosine
Triphosphate, yes. I give it away. ATP, that's the unit of energy. So it's a currency that is used throughout the body itself. So very similar to how, let's say, in Trinidad and Tobago, whenever you go around, what could you use? You could use your Links card, right? You go to KFC, you could use your Links card. You go to Rattan, you could use a Links card. You go to the gas station, you use a Links card. It's very simple because, it's just one, everything is just, everybody accepts it. So in a very similar way, in terms of in the body itself, energy is made in the form of ATP. And this ATP is recognized by all the cells in the body. It's a very convenient way of actually manufacturing a source of energy and having it being used by all the cells in the body. UNSLIC, E, D, until it's R, respiratory. R, reproduction. Is reproduction important? The reproductive?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, without it, you'll be going extinct.
Yeah, and that's the main reason we are here. We are here to reproduce. That's it. From a genetic perspective, we're here to reproduce and pass on our genes. And as your colleague quite rightly said, if we didn't do that, we would disappear. And then the last one, M, muscular system, involving all of those muscles. Very importantly, as we will see in terms of bringing about movement, you need the interaction of 3 organ systems. You need the interaction of skeletal, muscular, and nervous system. And when they interact, then you could bring about movement. That's very important. Okay. All right, so this is just showing the organization here. We have chemicals, cells, tissue, organs, organ systems, and all of these organ systems make up the body as a whole. Remarkable machine, I always say. All right, so we went through these in terms of what they do. The protection, support, and movement is brought about by integumentary, skin, and muscular. I would go so far as to say as well, you could put nervous in here because it's important that nervous interacts with skeletal and muscle to bring about movement. Coordination and control, you have nervous and endocrine. Nervous, rapid delivery of messages or impulses and brings about a quick change, whereas with the endocrine, involved with hormonal release and the change is a little slower. And in terms of circulation, as we mentioned, the cardiovascular and the lymphatic. Lymphatic, this is the repository of the white blood cells or the cells of the immune system. Cardiovascular, as we just outlined, very important in terms of the red blood cells, circulating red blood cells known as erythrocytes. So nutrition and fluid balance in the body, very important for that. To maintain it, respiratory system, you have the digestive system and the urinary system. We do know that when the urinary system, for instance, is out of whack, you could have instances where somebody urinates a lot and therefore a large volume of water is lost in that way. This is associated with certain types of diabetes, for instance. And most critically, production of offspring, the reproductive system, right? And as we mentioned, very critical as it relates to our carrying on of our genes from one generation to the next. All right, specialized groups of cells form what? A set of cells form? Is it tissues, organs, or organelles? So which one it is? Right, very good. Tissues, very good, very good. Very good, Natasha and Diane Kedwaru, right? So that is tissues, because and a collection of tissues, they do form the organs. Organelles are those small, organelles literally mean small organs, and these are the structures found in cells. Could you give me an example of an organelle? Something you find within a little structure in a cell. So think about it. You know those little things you draw? Okay, let me ask this. The organelle.
The
Nucleus,
no.
very good, very good. The nucleus. What about the organelle?
Mitochondria.
You read my mind. The organelle responsible for energy, the mitochondria. So those are examples of organelle. Very good. Now let's talk about metabolism in terms of what happens within the body itself. You have two types, catabolism and anabolism, right? How I remember it, catabolism. Anybody here have cats at home? Anybody? Is a cat person? All right, they don't want to share it. It's all good, right? So catabolism, usually when I think of cats, I think about their claws. I think of them tearing down curtains. So catabolism refers to breakdown, whereas anabolism refers to the building up. And we see, so building up using simpler substances, you build up more complex ones, whereas catabolism, you have complex ones and you break it down into simpler ones. Very important. So homeostasis. Homeostasis is the maintenance of a constant internal environment. So when we look at our body in terms of homeostasis and how it acts, if I were to ask this question, what is our internal temperature? That's the same thing that, you know, whenever you go to a store, when they take out that temperature, in these days of COVID-19, they take out the little thermometer that sometimes look like a gun. And before I used to be a little bit worried, you know, when they're pointing it at my head. I used to feel like, oh my gosh, you know, my end is coming. So these days, however, they point it at your hands, which is a lot better psychologically for me. All right, so in terms of our internal body temperature, what is it? Anybody knows internal body temperature?
35, 36, I think, around there.
Around there, you're quite right in terms of the average, closer to 37. 37 is ideal, but 35, 36, that would work as well. But 37 is usually the average. And as if ever, when you do go into the laboratory, or if ever you go into a laboratory and you look at the incubators, you will see that the temperatures set on the incubators are 37 degrees Celsius. And the reason why they set it at 37 is because usually they're doing experiments which mimic something that happens in the human body. So therefore, that's why they set the temperatures of those incubators at 37 degrees Celsius, which is our internal body temperature or core temperature. And if I were to ask you this question, why it is do we need to have our body set at 37 degrees Celsius? Would it be a problem if your internal or your core temperature drops to, let's say, 20 degrees Celsius, or let's say it goes up to 50 degrees Celsius? Would that be a problem?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. What could happen? More likely than not, if it's kept at that temperature for, let's say, a couple hours. ...
To die.
Oh yes, death, right? So then it begs to ask the question, why is it we need to stay at 37 degrees Celsius? Well, within our body, remember, we look at the organization. You have cells, cells make up tissues, organs, and so on. At the level of the cell itself, all of the reactions, there are numerous reactions which are taking place in the cytoplasm or the liquid portion of the cell. We're talking on the order of thousands of reactions. And these chemical reactions do things. One, most critically, they need a fluid environment to take place. And secondly, these reactions take place at a particular temperature. One example of reactions which come to mind is glycolysis, the breakdown of glucose in terms of getting energy, right? So that is a whole cascade of reactions, all under the control of different types of proteins known as enzymes. So this breakdown that occurs, these enzymes associated with the breakdown process, they do their optimal work or the maximum amount of work at a very particular temperature, which is very close to 37 degrees Celsius, which is why the body works very hard in terms of keeping our internal temperature at 37 degrees Celsius. And the reason that is done is because all collectively, the reactions which take place within our cells and by extension within our body, those chemical reactions, they have to take place at 37 degrees. We have just adapted to that. If you do fall outside of that range, oh yeah, and if it's maintained for an extended period of time, you could die, because what happens, those reactions will literally shut down. Now, why will they shut down? Let's have a closer look at that. Remember, I did mention that word enzyme, and an enzyme is nothing more, it's a catalyst. It has the ability to speed up a reaction. These enzymes are protein in nature. And what happens to protein when you heat them? Well, when you heat proteins, a number of things could happen. Let me ask this question. Anybody here could cook a stewed chicken?
Yes, sir.
Yes? Anybody could cook a stewed chicken well?
Yeah.
Yes, right. And one of the things you do when you cook stewed chicken, you're literally breaking it down. Initially, it's a little tough. By the end of the stewed chicken process, what you have is not only is it delicious, but it is softer. The tissue is softer as well. What you're doing is you're actually breaking down the bonds and you're breaking down the structure of the protein itself. And that is very important in terms of breaking it down. So the thing is, heat could actually change the structure of a protein, and that is very true. Now, the other thing, however, is this. When you look at an enzyme, remember we mentioned enzyme are catalysts. So what they do is they speed up a rate of a reaction. These enzymes, if you do heat them, or if they reach a certain temperature, what happens is they begin to break down. And not only do they begin to break down, their shape changes, right? Their shape changes. And the thing is, when you change the shape, you change the function, right? Remember, we did mention structure and function, anatomy and physiology. There's a correlation between anatomy, shape, and function. So going back to the body, in terms of those temperatures, when the temperature goes up, enzymes associated with reactions within the body itself, what happened to those enzymes? They begin to break down, or they begin to change their shape. When they change their shape, they change their function. They are no longer able to catalyze certain reactions, so those reactions stop. So just imagine those enzymes which are associated with glycolysis, or the breakdown of glucose to generate ATP. If those enzymes were to shut down, what would happen to you? What would happen inside your body if those enzymes associated with the breakdown of glucose were, if they decided to shut down? What do you think will happen? Aha. Aha. All right.
Can you repeat that for me?
Very simply, let me rephrase the question. What would happen if you didn't have energy? If you didn't have energy in your body, what would happen? Think about when you get up in the morning before you eat your breakfast.
You would feel lethargic.
Exactly, lethargic and tired all the time. And that's exactly what would happen, which is why usually when you see people are sick, you don't see them jumping up and running around the house, right? Because of the fact they do have an elevated temperature in some cases. And the reason why the body actually raises its temperature in that instance is really it's trying to kill off bacteria and microorganisms. We'll speak about that at another time. But they're actually trying to kill them off by doing the same thing, because these microorganisms as well, they do have enzymes associated with them. So what the body does, it raises its temperature in order to kill off those enzymes associated with these unicellular or multicellular organisms. So the thing is, it's trying to kill them off, and that's why you see you have a fever, right? The body temperature will go up. But if you really notice fevers, you don't have a fever for an extended period of time, because in raising your body temperature beyond the normal threshold of 37 degrees, of course, you are causing injury to yourself as well. But then there's a trade-off. It's like, well, I could maintain this 37 for a little while without any major damage. But these other things which are fighting me, the viruses, the bacteria, they're pretty small. They only have one cell or couple cells at most, so they will die off quicker. So that's what the body is thinking, and that's why it raises its temperature. That's why when you have certain bacterial or viral infections, you get a fever. What you're actually trying to do, you're trying to kill off these invaders by killing off their enzymes associated with different reactions that take place within them. And that's why you get a fever. Oh yeah, very interesting. All right, so all of those things very important. Homeostasis, maintenance of that internal temperature, not only temperature, but the environment, pH and different things, parameters, very important there. All right. Okay, now in terms of how it's done, it's usually done by a negative feedback mechanism. So which would mean that once you reach a certain set point, all right, so you'll have changes occurring until it reaches a certain set point, and then the changes will stop. All right, so that's a negative feedback mechanism. Very simple to think about. Think about an air conditioned unit. You know, you go into a room, you know, the room is kind of hot, you turn on the air conditioned unit. You want the temperature to drop down to 21 degrees Celsius. The air conditioned unit will remain on until it reaches 21 degrees Celsius, the surrounding environment. When it reaches 21, it cuts off. And that's an example of a negative feedback, because now the surrounding has a particular temperature which equals the set point, and it stops it. Now, you do have sometimes positive feedback, which is a sustained substance produced or change, and it's produced continuously. And the more change that occurs is the more it's produced. And two instances I could think of where that occurs in the body. One is associated with childbirth, in which oxytocin, a hormone, is released that causes uterine contractions to get the bundle of joy out. So your uterus is contracting, more oxytocin is released, more contractions, and the more contractions you have is the more oxytocin that is released. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze until the bundle of joy is released. Another one is associated with bleeding in the body itself. When you do have, let's say, a blood vessel being burst and you have release of blood, there are certain enzymes within the blood itself that initiates a cascade which leads to the formation of a plug, or, you know, yes? A plug, yes. Yes. So this cascade is very important, because what would happen if it didn't form a scab or a plug? You know, if you have, let's say, a burst in one of your blood vessels, what would happen if that doesn't stop? Correct? Correct. Hemorrhaging, right? Very true. You'll just continue to hemorrhage, until what happens? You begin to see the ancestors, right? You're like, great grandmommy, is that you? And she was like, yes, yes, child, welcome, welcome, right? So hemorrhaging, in order to stop hemorrhaging, there's chemicals are released in the blood itself, and it causes then the formation of a plug, a scab, right, which is fibrin, and different other proteins are released, leading to that formation. And so more blood that is coming through, or that is released outside of the environment of the blood vessels, more you will have this cascade occurring to plug it up. All right, that is very, very important where that is concerned. So those are two examples of positive feedback mechanisms: formation of a plug or scab, and also uterine contractions involving oxytocin. All the others, to the best of my knowledge, which occur in the body, are of negative feedback mechanisms. All right, so aging, what happens as you start to get a little older? Well, you know, everything begins to slow down, as we're well aware, right? And not only that, as associated with aging, you do have changes in the cells themselves in terms of functionality. So which is why as you get older, with most persons, you know, you have an increase in terms of illnesses, right? So not only does it point to things shutting down, but also in terms of the immune system having that ability to repair itself. One of the things you have to remember, the immune system, of course, is primarily what the major function is for keeping you well, but you have to remember your body is a machine. It could heal itself, right? So which is why oftentimes when we are sick, one of the things we often would do is take body rest, take rest. And during this time, what happens? The body runs a self-evaluation and it looks to fix itself, right? So what medicines really do, it really assists the body in repairing itself. So always remember that, and always remember it is very important to take time out for yourself. Because yes, I know many of us, we have different roles. We have the roles of what mother, wife, sister, daughter, and cousin, and we have a whole lot of things, student, we have a whole lot of different roles, but always remember it is very important to take time out for yourself. You are number one, right? Always remember that. And I would encourage you ever so often, take a little time out for yourself. Do like a little meditation for that matter. Calm yourself, bring yourself down a little bit. Right? You don't want to be having that blood pressure running high all of the time. Okay, how many of us here take time out to meditate and relax and so on? Everybody just do that? Take a little time out? I know some persons mention they like to read, and things like that. Everybody, you always take time out for yourself. Kimberly, you just take time out? Stephanie, you take time out?
No,
No, you don't take time
nope,
out. Not regularly. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
not at all.
Not at all, right. But it is important, you got to remember that, right? Very, very important. I did send something for you all last week. You all got it from Harvard Medical School as it relates to within the time of COVID, certain things to do, relaxation. And it could be something very simple, right? Walking, I know this is something maybe a lot of you all missing as you all are not in school anymore. Usually after school, what would happen? You walk down Mokorapo Street, or walk up, depending how you look at it, up to Library Corner. And then, say if you're going down High Street, you walk. Oh, walking is great. Or some people might go Independence Avenue and walk up the hill there in front of the hospital, right? But that is very relaxing as well. Not only is it relaxing, but it also stimulates hormones in your body, the so-called hormones that make you feel good, and they're called endorphins, right? So we're missing out on those things because we have a more sedentary or relaxed state now in the time of COVID. But as mentioned, try as much as you could, to just get a little time for yourself. And as who was it that pointed out they like to exercise? Somebody mentioned today is Vishni. Vishni mentioned she liked to exercise. Was it you, Vishni? Or
No, sir.
no, I'm making up stories then. If it wasn't Vishni, Ria, was you?
yeah.
Oh, there you go. Phew. Okay, I wasn't too far off, right? But do remember, take time out for yourself. Let's go forward. We're almost there. Let's go. All right. So we talk about introduction of the body in terms of the organization, from the chemicals to cells to tissues, organ systems, and collectively the 11 organ systems form our entire body. Now let's take a look at the directions in the body. And with these, they're pretty straightforward. You just have to know them. There's one of these things, because in your professional career, you will be hearing these terms all the time. Let's have a quick look. So as it relates to the body here, you have superior, inferior as it relates to the midline, right? Superior above, inferior is below, anterior is towards the front, posterior is towards the rear end. Now, as it relates to a joint, so in this case, the shoulder, you'd say um, it's proximal. So the shoulder is proximal as opposed to the hand. The hand is more distal as opposed to the shoulder joint. In terms of, if you were using a measurement, let's say the elbow. Elbow is more proximal to the shoulder, whereas the hand is more distal or further away from the joint itself. So it's a measure of joint distances, all right? All right, just 1 second. I would get back. Just have a call here. Right. Okay, so hello. Yes. So it has some students who just want to join the class. So it's okay. Let me just, if I just pause for a cause here. So let's just take a little break, a 5-minute break. Let me just send the link to the COSAT emails. Okay. All right. So
Okay.
literally 2 minutes. All right. So just hang on. All right. Let me see how fast I can do that. Okay. Okay, hello, everyone. I can't think of a way otherwise. I have to close this meeting, send the link to the other students, the new student, and then I'll have to reopen it. All right. So sorry about that. So I'll have to anybody else, let me see. Okay, let me see if I could use my phone actually. Let me try that. Okay, okay, so hold on again. Let me see if I could use my phone to send a link to these persons. All right, just hold on. Okay, I almost finished. Okay, bear with me. Yeah, they say some new students are getting in here. Okay. Okay. Well, hi again, everybody. Yeah. Well, at least I try to send off those emails. Anybody has access to their cont'd email right now? Could you tell me if you received any email from me?
Yes, I did. So I just received an email.
Oh, great. PTL. Praise the Lord. All right, good. So that means then that everybody, which is the class number is actually 28. So there were some persons who, yeah, thanks, Ria. um, there were some persons who didn't get in. That was actually the chair that called me, because normally I don't disrupt my class for any reason. But yeah, that's my boss that called to let me know that there were some new students, so they would not have known about the WhatsApp group or anything else. So they just couldn't get in. So they were wondering what was going on. So that's why I had to do that. My sincerest apologies. But as I said, this session is is being recorded. Yeah, it's currently still being recorded, right? So that is not an issue. All right, so let's get back then. I do thank you for your patience. That was rather kind of you in terms of staying around. Yeah. Okay. All right. You all seeing the screen? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we don't have long again. We'll be wrapping up within the half hour. All right, or less. So let's go. So directionally, right, so we mentioned in terms of these directions here, right, you have superior, inferior, posterior, anterior, and proximal and distal as it relates to the joint itself in terms of being close to it and as opposed to being further away from it, where that is concerned. All right, somebody just came in. So I guess they did get the emails then. Okay. All right, so in terms of the divisional planes, you have coronal, sagittal, and transverse, and we'll take a look at those and see what they mean. Medial means, of course, towards the midline. Coronal, sagittal, and transverse. Anybody here that drink beer? Corona? I don't know if you're familiar with it. Corona beer. Okay, nobody know about that, sir. I don't know what you're talking about. Alcohol does not touch my lips. Fair enough. All right, but Corona, if you look at the Corona beer, one of the things you will notice on it is a crown. And actually, Corona does relate to the word crown itself. Corona, I want to say it's Latin for crown. All right, so in terms of, if you look at it here, in terms of the plane involved, think about a tiara. The tiaras go from one ear to the next. Do we have any beauty queens in the class? Anybody who beauty queen, or when you had your graduation or your wedding, you're wearing a little tiara, it goes from ear to ear. So the coronal plane is in this section. Sagittal, for those of us who follow the houses of the zodiac, where any Sagittarius here, Sagittarius, I want to say is the twins. So if you think about a person, we do have symmetry about our midline. So if you were to draw a line directly down the center of our heads, straight down, you recognize we have symmetry. So in other words, what's on one side is on the other side. So the sagittal plane refers to the fact that, twins are identical, about that midline. Then of course, transverse plane is coming across this way from left to right. All right, so that refers to the body. When we're thinking about tissue sections, we have cross sections, longitudinal and oblique. Or by the same notion, let me just say hello to our new student who just arrived. As I mentioned to everyone else as well, this session is being recorded and it will be provided to you by the end of the class. By 8 p.m. today, a YouTube video with everything that was done today. So don't feel that you are at any loss at all, okay? All right, so the tissue sections and cross sections, longitudinal and oblique. So notice, let me just take a step back. If you were to, we're not going forward, we're going back. Previous. So whereas tissue involves these sections, when we're looking at the planes of division, right? So for planes, when you're looking at an entire organism, right, you have coronal, sagittal, and transverse. But for tissues or things that are a lot smaller, you have cross section, longitudinal. So this would normally be the sagittal section, right? So this would be the sagittal, well, kind of like a coronal really. But depending on how you look at it, it could be coronal section or sagittal. But you don't have coronal or sagittal, but instead what you have is oblique, longitudinal, and cross section as it relates to tissues. Okay. All right. So body cavities. So very important here when we look at the body cavities, we have the cranial and the spinal cavity. Let me ask you this. Is there a break between the, your brain and your spinal cord? Is there a division between the two?
No, sir.
No.
What would happen if there's a break between your brain and your spinal
You
cord?
become paralyzed.
Some very good. Well, not very good, but you know, good that you do know it. There'll be some degree of paralysis depending on where the break is, which is why it's very important to take care of your spine. For those of us who ride motorcycles, or who in fact who like to ride behind somebody, you know, on the back seat, as it were, of the motorcycle, it's very, it would be in your interest to wear jackets that have metal plates. There's some jackets where they have metal plates that are stitched into the back area, and that is really to protect your spine. Good. So here we have the dorsal cavity, right, consisting of this area here. Then out front, we have the ventral cavity, consisting of the thoracic and abdominal pelvic. The abdominal pelvic is split into, as the name implies, abdominal and pelvic, whereas the thoracic cavity, the border, of course, of the thoracic cavity is the diaphragm. Diaphragm is the main muscle associated with what action?
Breathe. Respiratory.
Breathing, respiration, very good. Yeah, diaphragm is the major muscle associated with it. And when you go to SNF2, Structure and Function Part 2, you will see how the diaphragm is associated. Very important to respiration, and the diaphragm together with the intercostal muscles, those muscles that run between the ribs, they collectively are responsible for respiration. All right. So what do those intercostal muscles look like? Anybody here like to eat ribs? You know, little barbecue ribs or what have you not, that comes from, what is it, beef or pork, all due respect to persons who don't eat pork, right? When you're eating those ribs, that meat you're actually eating is primarily that muscle that runs between the ribs, very importantly there. All right, so those are the body cavities. Now, let's look at the two main dorsal cavities there that we just, dorsal cavities, the cranial and the spine. So dorsal refers to the back. So the main cavities that run to the back of the human form would be the cavity for the brain and the cavity that encases the spinal cord. And again, the spinal cord as well, for those of us who like chicken. Anybody here like chicken? They eat chicken? Yeah?
Yep.
Anybody here like to eat back and neck? Yeah, you know, sometimes in pilau, yeah, it's give it good flavor because bones actually they do have flavor associated with them. And that flavor actually comes, a lot of flavor comes from the fact that within bone tissue, you have what are known as stem cells, hematopoietic stem cells. These are special cells that actually make red blood cells. And they give a lot of flavor in terms of cooking. That's why it's good when you're making pilau to use bony meat like back and neck. So for those of us who are familiar with the neck, you know, in the middle of the neck, it have a part you suck out. Right, and you see a long thing coming out. That's actually the spinal cord. That long thing that looks like a string. That's the spinal cord. You didn't know that before, and all these years you've been delicious, right? But it's all protein, right? So that is the spinal cord of the chicken. And notice it is encased or enclosed in bone. And why do you think they put it in the middle of the bone? Why your spinal cord didn't in terms of the arrangement? Why is it on the outside of your vertebral column? Why is it through the middle? One word, because it is a word that begins with I. 9 letters, and it rhymes with important. It is important. Very good. It is so important. That's why it is actually, if you notice in your body itself, those things which are very important is totally encased by bone. Your brain, your spinal cord. But those are kind of disposable. Well, it have little spaces in between, you know. Your leg, it have, you know, your thigh. Well, you could still... But those things which are critical, that's why you have all that protection around it. Spinal cord, critical. That's why you have all of that encasement of bone around it. Okay, good. So the ventral cavity, we're talking to the front, the thoracic, we mentioned that, and the abdominal pelvic. The pericardial cavity, Peri means around, cardia refers to the heart. So around the heart, there's a fluid-filled sac which provides or prevents friction from the heart against the lungs. So the pericardial cavity contains the pericardium and the heart. You look more at that in SNF2. Then you have the pleural cavity, again referring to the lungs, and the mediastinum. Mediastinum is that cavity towards the center of the chest, which actually contains the heart, right? So the mediastinum, that is also a cavity, and most critically, what you would find in there is the heart itself. Abdominal pelvic. Abdominal is superior to the pelvic. The pelvic is the lower part, and of course the abdomen and the pelvic region, that's what they stand for. True or false? The pelvic is superior to the abdominal. True or false? So is the pelvic superior or above the abdominal? True or false? What say you? False. Yeah, some things are not difficult in life. That's a very good answer. It is. The pelvic is inferior or below. So that's a very good answer you gave there. So here, this is why I was talking about the mediastinum, this region here. And we see what's in the mediastinum, the space between the lungs, really. We see this nice guy here, the heart. Notice that the apex or the pointy part of the heart always points to the left. And that's how we could always tell, if you're looking at an anatomical figure, which side is the left and which side is the right, because the apex of the heart always points to the left. All right, so the abdomen now, this is where it gets a little tricky. These names, you will have to know them in terms of these 9 regions. So from the top going left to right, we have the going from right to left. The right hypochondriac, epigastric, and left hypochondriac. The right lumbar, umbilical, and left lumbar region. Within the umbilical region, of course, you will find your umbilicus, also known as your belly button. And then you have your right iliac, hypogastric, and left iliac, also known as your inguinal regions. So do take note of these 9 regions of the abdomen. Now let's look at those quadrants. Left and right upper, left and right lower quadrants. All right, so that's the divisions associated there. We wouldn't touch on the metric system because those are not on the syllabus itself. Right, so we just go past there. Okay, so what did we look at today? Well, we did mention in terms of the arrangement of the body itself, right? We looked at it from the level of chemicals forming tissues, chemicals forming cells or associated to form cells, cells forming tissues, tissues forming organs, organs forming organ systems, and collectively giving rise to the human body itself. In terms of the organ systems, we have 11 organ systems, which could be remembered by that word. You all remember the word?
Unsliced.
Unsliced RRM, very good. Unsliced RRM, or you could say unsliced Mr. R. I remember in one class I was telling them, so I was trying to give them hints for them to get the word unsliced. So I said, what will you have if you have a bread that is not cut up? Somebody ball out a hops. All right, so that's why I no longer say that. I just tell them, okay, fair enough, unsliced bread, unsliced, right? I just give the word, but don't give the prompts. So unsliced RRM in terms of the organ system. U for urinary, N for nervous. S stands for what? I forgot. Skeletal. L stands for?
Lymphatic system.
Lymphatic. I stands for?
Integumentary.
C stands for?
Cardiovascular.
Cardiovascular. Very good. E stands for?
Endocrine.
Endocrine. Very good. D stands for?
Digestive.
Digestive, right? R? Respiratory or respiratory. The other R? Reproductive. And M? Muscular, right. So those are the 11 organ systems, right? And collectively, they give rise to the entire human organism itself. All right, so the 11 organ system. After that, we mentioned homeostasis in terms of maintenance of that constant internal environment. We did state that the internal temperature is at 37 degrees Celsius, and that is kept at that temperature to ensure that those reactions, chemical reactions, which occur within the body are able to proceed because they need that temperature. Those reactions, they're usually governed by enzymes. Enzymes are proteins, and proteins are very sensitive to temperature changes. We know that because we could stew chicken, or you could stew, if you have like a yard fowl, for those of us who have common fowls, and these fowls are very hard, right? So what you usually do is put it in a pressure cooker, and after about 2 hours, Mr. Yard fowl becomes very soft. So what you're doing is changing the arrangement of the protein, changing its structure. And to do that, what you do, you're introducing heat. In the body itself, when you're thinking about these proteins, which are known as enzymes, and these alter the rate of chemical reactions which take place in the body itself, these reactions which do occur in the body, they're governed by these enzymes, but these enzymes are very tricky and they only work at certain temperatures. So therefore, if you fall outside of that 37-degree temperature range, what you'd have happening is a number of reactions which occur in the body would actually stop. And that is what gives you a feeling of malaise or sickness, because the body is not doing what it is supposed to do. So very importantly, there we mentioned that homeostasis, and the body does a lot. It has sensors around that also monitor the internal temperature, and it has mechanisms in place to adjust and do things to actually either bring up the temperature or to drop it down. Let me ask this question. If you're feeling too cold, so if your body temperature is going down, what do you normally do? Let's say in the night, these nights it has been very cold, notwithstanding the fact that, you know, you might have a significant other, or you might have a coverlet or a blanket. Okay, I'll give away the answer there. No, well, no, actually, no. Or a blanket to actually increase your temperature. What else does the body normally do in terms of raising that temperature? What could you do?
You'll get goosebumps.
Goosebumps, right? That's one thing in terms of goosebumps. So in doing that, it is preventing heat loss through the skin. And what's another thing? What happens, let's say if you're in a room and it's very, very cold, what do you begin to do? So is that something you do?
You shiver?
You shiver, very good. And when you shiver, what you're doing is you're increasing muscle contraction, and one of the byproducts of muscle contraction is heat formation. All right. So by the muscle contraction occurring, it leads to heat formation. So that's very important there in terms of heat formation. That's very important. So your body does that as a mechanism in terms of actually accommodating for that heat loss, right? So it shivers. And by the same token, when you're too hot, let's say you're outside and you're running, what happens to your body? What
Sweat.
you begin to sweat, and that's a means of cooling down. So both of those things, those are homeostatic mechanisms that the body employs to ensure that your core temperature remains at around 37 degrees Celsius. We also mentioned in terms of the mechanism, the majority of those mechanisms are by a negative feedback. And what do we mean by negative feedback is that certain things are done. Once it reaches its set point, those things which are causing the change stop. All right. And most of the homeostatic things or mechanisms that occur in the body follow a negative feedback. Once it reaches a set point, you know, that which is causing the change stops, except for, as we mentioned, one, childbirth. During childbirth, one of the things, hormone release oxytocin, and the more oxytocin that is released, it causes more contractions. You're having more contractions and more oxytocin is released in order to get that bundle of joy out into the world. Another one that we mentioned is the clotting process, blood clotting, in which when blood is present, as more blood escapes from the blood vessels itself, you have a chemical cascade or a set of reactions which occur that leads to the formation of a plug, right? Or a clot, a blood clot. And this is very important. And these are the only, in terms of all of the homeostatic mechanism, these are really the only two which I could think of which operate from a positive feedback in terms of more is produced, and you're getting the change, but still more is produced, and there's no set point. Well, there is a set point. Once the clot is actually completely formed, things stop. And conversely, when the baby is actually born, in terms of exiting via the vaginal passage or C-section through the abdomen, you might say that, the lower pelvic region, sorry, when it does exit, well, then you have that cascade stopping. So that's the only time you will have that cascade being halted. So we did mention that. Then we looked at the different sections associated with the body itself, right? We look at the sagittal section, the coronal section, cross-section, and then we look at longitudinal, oblique, and cross-section as it relates to tissues itself. Then we look at the different cavities, right? The major cavities within the body itself, right? Towards the back, you have the spine, the cavity that holds the brain. You also have the cavity which holds the spinal cord. And then, of course, you have the abdominal pelvic cavity. The separation between the abdominal region and the pelvic, of course, is brought about, the abdominal is brought about by the pelvis, right? Sorry, not the pelvis, that diaphragm. The diaphragm is that muscle which actually does that separation between the thorax and the abdomen, all right? And that was basically the lecture for today. All right, so I would stop there for today. I would like to welcome all the new students who came in today. And just to mention to you all these new students, this session is being recorded, and once we finish here, it will be turned into a YouTube video and sent to the WhatsApp group and also to your email, your cont'd email address. All right, the e-classroom should be opening up this week, so you will be sent the password in due course. But until such time, all of the recordings will be sent to your both places, cont'd email and also the WhatsApp group. In terms of the WhatsApp group, the link will be sent to your cont'd email. So just do check your cont'd email, you'll get the link to the WhatsApp group. And the WhatsApp group is a really nice means by which we communicate quickly with each other. All right. Any questions?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Not
So,
yet.
okay, good. All right. So as I said, once we close off, I will convert this to a YouTube video and send it your way. So look for it before 8 o'clock. So Dan Katwaru, Janelle, Natasha, Lucille, Anjali, Aviel, Mr. Ramuta, Danielle, Diana, Miss Galaxy 56 Edge Plus, Kimberly, Ravina, Ria, Shania, Stephanie, Sunalia or Swinalia. Hope I'm pronouncing it right. Did I get it right, Miss Nana? Is it Swinalia?
It's Sunaila.
Sonaila, my bad. All right. Sonaila, Victoria, Vishni, Stephanie. I hope I didn't mix out anybody. Ravina, Kimberly, I don't think I missed out everybody. If I did, blame it on my head, not my heart. It has been my distinct pleasure to be a lecturer for this afternoon, and I look forward to a good relationship during the semester. All right. So,
Yes, sir. So I have a question.
Go ahead.
I kind of like to jump ahead a little bit. I like to study. Could you tell me what would be maybe the next topic for the next class?
What I would do, I would send the course guide to you.
Okay, all right.
The course outline. I'll send that to you all.
Okay, thanks.
All right. That's about it then, everyone.
Okay, so be
So
safe,
pleasant day.
everybody.
Similarly, till next week. Okay, so don't forget,
Okay,
you'll
bye-bye.
have the videos. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.